Welcome to the Wood Turning Workshop. Today we're going to make a great project that will help you when you're entertaining all your friends. We're going to be making an elevated platter. There you go. That pretty good? Don't mind if I do myself. Oh, wonderful. Oh, here. You can have it. Thank you. Stay tuned. Now to make today's project an elevated platter, you're going to need a single piece of wood about this big. It'll cost you around 600 bucks, but it'll really be worth it. Nah, you know me, I'm a little more thrifty than that. So this is made out of one piece of 2-inch thick curly maple. And the maple itself is about 13 inches wide. And it starts with a platter on top, and then you have a spindle that holds that platter up. And then we have a bottom platter. So it's 2 platters and a spindle. Really simple to cut out and to make. And you can see I use some really ugly wood, and that usually makes a beautiful, beautiful project. So let's get started. The tools we'll be using today are a 1/2 inch bowl gouge, a 1.5 inch round nose scraper, a 1/2 inch box scraper, a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, a 3/8 inch spindle gouge, a 1/2 inch skew, a 1/4 inch parting tool, an 1/8 inch parting tool. You'll need a set of calipers and a Jacob's chuck with a 1-inch Forstner bit. Well, the first step of the project, we're going to make the spindle that holds the platters together. Now, I'm using a piece of wood that is 7 inches long, and we want our spindle to be about 6 1/4 inches. So I'm just going to cheat and use the one I've already made and mark out those 2 end marks. I also have a decorative bead here, which takes up about a 1/2 inch. There's 2 beads there. And then there's another important point down here are the tenons. Now the tenons need to be 1 inch in diameter because we're going to drill 1-inch holes in the 2 platters to attach it. So we'll just take our parting tool right now and remove that wood, bring it down a little bit, and I've got my calipers right here. And we'll just go on down to 1 inch in diameter. Okay, there we have 1 inch. Now I'm going to switch to a wider parting tool, and it'll peel the wood a lot quicker. There we go. Come back to this side, do the same thing. Bring it down, get my calipers. Just let the calipers ride. Now this is curly maple, so it's going to make the tool bounce a little bit because it's got a wicked grain in it that is swirling all over. It's really neat stuff. Okay, let's turn that off because I want to talk about shape before we shape the spindle. When you make a piece, you want to guide the viewer's eye. So we have 2 platters. We want to bring their eye up. We want to lift the piece up. We don't want it to look heavy. So on this spindle that we made, it's fat at the bottom, it's got a couple beads, and then we have this great gentle bead going up. It curves and comes up to the top. Now the top is about as wide as the bottom, but if you notice, it's slender. It gets slender as it goes up, so it sweeps your eye up. If it was like this, it still looks nice, but it's kind of heavy. And with that big platter, this wouldn't match up with the bottom. So this kind of complements the wide platter, and this complements the smaller platter on top. So keep that in mind, and read books and look on the internet because you can find all sorts of shapes to help you make your designs, because I even look on the web sometimes, and for this show I actually found a stair maker, and they make spindles for stair rails, and man, I got a lot of good ideas off of that. It really gave me a lot of incentive, imagination, ideas. And it really helped me solidify what I wanted to do with this project. So now I'm just making a gentle curve. I'm working from high to low with my 1/2 inch regular grind spindle gouge. And I'm just going to gently work my way into the shape I need. Make sure your tools are sharp every time you start a project. If they get a little bit dull, it won't help you out at all. And so you just work your way back and forth to make this shape. And I want to leave a little straight edge right here for the transition into the upper platter. And if you get stuck, it's okay to come in and work your way down to something. Your shape isn't coming out right. I admire the turners who can make those long sweeping movements and make those beautiful shapes. I am not one of those. Okay, we're going to work our way back here. This is the mark where our beads are going to be, so I'm just going to start rolling to make the bottom part of this elongated bead. And I want to keep this as wide as possible because the wood's only 2 inches thick. And if I take it down much more than that, it'll look a little bit odd. So I'm going to work my way back now. And just gently remove the wood and sneak into that shape. Oops, I can't say that. You have to sneak into beads. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Now we need to move on to the next step. We're going to make the 2 beads on the bottom, and they're nice little beads. They're about a 1/4 inch apiece. Well, I can't use that spindle gouge I was using. It's a 1/2 inch with a regular grind. I want to use a 3/8 inch with a fingernail grind. It allows me to get in tighter and get around the corners on something like this. So we'll start it back up, and I just want to smooth this out a bit. So it'll be a nice cut. Okay. And now we're going to just start rounding over the outside of the top bead and work our way down to the intersection between this gentle curve and where that bead's going to be. You have to move your body quite a ways to make this movement. You start here, you're turning, lifting, turning, 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 lifting, and you make contact. So when you make a small bead, you still got to move a long ways. Our beads meet right there in the center. So I want to come in, start a curve, come back here, start a curve, and keep curving. Raise the tool, swing it. That way you don't catch the edge. There we go, see a little bit better. There we go. Come back here. Okay. Now, it doesn't look like it's really pretty right now, but that's just because I'm working the center part. I'm going to take this down a little bit and start curving it. And you can even do a pull cut if you don't want to take the risk of making that cut all the way. So there we're good. Now just gently blend this. Like I said, if you can make this in one shot, more power to you. You're a power turner. But if you can't, there's no shame in taking your time to make your beads. Now we want this one to curve a little bit underneath. It's going to meet the bottom platter, but we've got to make that transition look like it's a real curve. We can come back, we can scrape that, freshen that up a bit, bring this in here like so. Okay. Now, I'm going to do one last cut here. You can't see it from that angle, but I'm going to take the parting tool and I'm going to angle, not straight, I'm going to angle in just a little bit on the bottom. Because by cutting in like this, when this sits against the bottom of the platter, it's going to sit flush on the outer edge and you won't have a gap. Okay, I went ahead and saved you the boredom of watching me sand this to 320 grit. And then I went to the bandsaw and cut the tenon shorter. This one's about a 1/2 inch, that one's about a 1/4 inch, because we don't want to have to drill holes too deeply into our platters or they'll go through and then we have a really ugly looking platter. I've mounted my chuck on my lathe and I've got my large jaws in here. And we're going to do something we haven't done before on the show. We're going to use 2 different ways of mounting. But I have to get a measurement right off the bat of the width of my jaws right here. And this is going to be a very important measurement in a little bit. And I want to take that and increase it by about 1/16 of an inch. Okay. Now, we are going to mount this piece of wood onto here using a worm screw. Now, if you buy a set of chuck, if you buy a chuck, it comes with a set of jaws, and it also comes with a worm screw, which is a really cool thing. This one's 3/8 of an inch in diameter. It's got a really coarse thread on it, and you can lock it in like that. And then if you drill a hole in your wood, you can just thread it on and it holds it. Well, this is a little bit longer than I wanted it. I only wanted it to be about 3/4 of an inch deep. So I took some MDF board and I cut a circle and I drilled a hole into it, and you can spin it on there, and then I actually turned this down to where I only had 3/4 of an inch of the worm drive or worm screw coming out. So anyway, then I drilled a hole that was
11:30 seconds.
11/30 seconds, thank you, of an inch wide. And now it goes on here, and the reason I did 11/30 seconds is because that gives the teeth on the screw something to grip into. So this screws on here, and then it pulls in nice and flat, and now we've got a really nice way of mounting this on here so we can turn it. Okay, now I've gone ahead and mounted a Jacob's chuck with a 1-inch bit in my tailstock because I want to drill the hole that's going to receive the tenon from the spindle we just turned. So I'll bring this up close. I'm going to make sure my speed is way down when I start this up. There we go. And we're going to bring it up to about sanding speed, which is probably about between 300 and 600 RPM, because we don't want to burn the wood as we do this cut. That's locked down. So I'm going to just gently feed this in. It's a Forstner bit. And the Forstner bit, I measured it, and it's exactly a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to just go a touch deeper than the head of it and bring it out. So we've got the hole drilled. Now, take this tailstock off and get it out of the way. Okay, now we're going to turn it back on, and that measurement I got off the jaws, we're going to transfer that with the calipers. And I'm touching the pointed end first. Not too wide, too wide, too wide. Okay, now I'm going to push a little harder now, and it matches up with that end, so we have the diameter for our jaws. And I'll show you again in just a little bit how that all works out. So I'm going to bring my tool rest up now, raise it up a little bit above center. And how do I know it's a little bit above center? I've worked with this lathe long enough that I know if I put my finger right here, it's the right spacer to get it where I need it. So I'll rotate this, make sure nothing hits. We're going to grab our 1/2 inch bowl gouge with a fingernail grind, and I just want to clean up the blank this direction. So we just gently touch it and come straight across. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to move my tool rest to the other side, like so. Now I'm going to bring it down to where it's a little bit below center, because I'm going to start doing a push cut like this with the tool, and the tool now is right at center height when I make this cut. Now what I want to do is just take the tool and push in like so. Now what I'm going to do is to continue to work my way back doing that to start making this shape. So I'm just going to chunk in and start turning away the wood. Now this is really tough, hard wood. It's been kiln dried. So I have to take my time and make sure I have a sharp tool as I do this. But you know, not all wood comes this way. I get asked a lot of questions, and one of the questions I get asked the most is, what's this stuff on the wood I'm buying? Well, it's wax, and it's there for several different reasons. And my friend Paul, how you doing today, Paul?
Hey, Tim.
He's going to talk to us and explain why there is wax on the wood you're buying.
Well, there's many reasons you'll have wax on the wood, and it all really stems down to protection. Our distributor gets these in big slabs, gets these in trunks, or even the whole tree at sometimes.
Really?
And so he'll cut them up for us in many different sizes and shapes, whatever we want. But when he gets done cutting them, he has to ship it to us. And a lot of times this wood is really, really green.
Green mean wet and just
Wet,
fresh out of the ground.
Fresh cut, straight from the tree.
Right.
And so he'll put a wax over the whole thing, much like this one, that'll protect it from drying out and cracking. And another reason he'll put this on there is that in transport, you know, it goes through many different hands and many different places. Bugs might try to get into there. Free meal.
Yeah, bugs love wood.
And so they'll put a wax over the whole thing to protect it from drying out, from cracking, and they'll protect it also from those bugs.
Because bugs don't like wax. Well, I got a question. Now, this piece you have in your hand, it's ebony, and it's completely waxed. And while over here, we have a piece of Purple Heart, it's only waxed on the ends. And I noticed that some others aren't even waxed at all. So why the difference?
Well, it really stems down to how much of the drying or the kiln drying that has been done with that piece of wood.
Right.
This one has been mostly dried. It's gone from a person who got it and cut it to another person who will put it into a kiln, dry it out, and then to protect it, he'll put some wax on it before he ships it out to us.
Right, because every region in the United States has a different humidity level
Yes.
and moisture content. So if you didn't cover that, even though it was pretty dry, it could swell and crack because going from one coast to the other coast is a big difference, right?
Right. You know, and the end of the end grain of wood is much like straws.
Right.
And the wood just wants to really escape through there really fast. And through the side, it'll just allow that humidity and allow that adjustment to where it's going across the country to be an even transition.
Right, so it just slowly comes out here, but if this wasn't waxed, it would just come out real fast and too fast.
And too fast, and you would end up with a cracked piece of wood.
Well, Paul, now that you answered my questions about wax, if I buy this nice expensive piece of ammonia burl and take it home, I still have to encourage the drying process or else it will crack, right? So what do I need to do with this piece of wood?
Well, this piece of wood, being how thick it is, you could scrape all that wax off and it would never really dry. The inside would still be wet. So what you want to do is go ahead and turn it. Put it on your lathe, turn the outside, turn the inside, but leave it about 1/4 of an inch thicker than what you really want.
Right.
Then take up all those shavings, pack it around it, and put it into one of those brown paper bags. And then put it on the shelf and let it sit for 4 or 5 months.
So that helps it dry slowly and it won't crack then, right?
Helps it dry slowly and evenly.
Okay, well in the case of the ebony, it's going to be spindle turning, and this piece is about 2 inches thick. Now you could get this to dry before you use it, couldn't you?
Yes, you can. You can take it like a cabinet scraper, scrape all that wax off there, leaving it on the ends though.
Right.
And then put it on your shelf for a couple months.
And one of the ways to check and make sure that it is dry would be to weigh it every so often. Once it stops losing weight,
Oh yeah.
you know it's dry. Well, I really appreciate it, Paul. You really opened our eyes on what wax is on wood and how to work with it. Thank you. Well, now you know what that stuff is on the wood you buy. Well, I got another question for you. How many of you been paying attention? Well, I haven't. Remember that hole I drilled? What's wrong with this? Here's the top of the platter. Here's the bottom. We almost made it to za. So, design modification time. I'm just going to make my platter a little bit thinner, and we're going to turn away that nice 1/2-inch hole I put in the bottom of my platter. Anyway, I've gone ahead and shaped this out roughly. I've got the curve I want. It looks good, and I've got a little lip here because that's my foot. Now, the mark I transferred was the outside diameter of my jaws. We're actually going to fit my jaws into the recess that we're going to make here. So I'm going to take my bowl gouge, and I can pick up the speed a little bit because turning towards the center, the wood's not moving as many feet per second as it is on the outside. Now just make sure you rub the bevel as you make the cut. You can see I got a little bitty hole there left in the tip of that Forstner bit, so we got to go down and get rid of it. I'm glad I pay attention when I'm turning. I actually have used tools upside down before, and then they've gone later, uh-oh. Okay, so now I want to bring the tool this way to the side, and I'm going to push in, start to make a cut. I sweep it, and I roll it just a touch, so I can keep the bevel rubbing. There we go. I'll repeat it again. And I'm pushing in, sweep and roll. Now this tool can't make the finished cut that I need because the jaws that I'm going to expand into the hole are dovetailed outward. So I'm going to take, oops, let me turn this off. Got to raise my tool rest just a bit, just to about center height. There we go. There's my skew. Time to hold your breath again. Nope. When you use a skew flat to scrape, it's a very safe and gentle tool. And I'm going in at a bit of an angle, and that angle matches the jaws on my chuck. So when I expand them, the dovetail will fit perfectly into this recess. And I want to make a very clean cut because it's very hard to sand here, and I want this to have a finish on it that I don't have to even touch. Now, I got to clean this bottom up, and you can actually use your skew as a scraper to clean up the bottom. But there's a better tool for the job, and that is my box scraper. I put the bowl gouge up. I don't need that for a little bit. Now, a box scraper just has a flat edge on both two sides, and it's for making flat bottoms and flat sides. Now, I want to raise the tool rest up just a little bit because I want this scraper to angle down as I use it. And I have a little torn grain left from the bowl gouge, so I'm going to bring this in like this now. and I can just start gently pressing it in, and I can flatten out the bottom. Now, I don't want to remove the wood quickly. Now, I do have to bring it down a bit because of the torn grain, but the faster you push that tool in, the more likely you are to tear the grain out. And since this is curly maple, I can guarantee you, you're going to wind up with some torn grain somewhere because the way the grain swirls. It's a real problem when you're working with it. And let's see how this is looking. That's looking pretty good. I got a little bit of torn grain right there, but that should sand out, but the rest is looking nice. So I'll just keep working my way this direction. And once I get this finished, we're going to move to the outer edge of the platter and form the bead. Okay, now the bottom's the way I want it, and we're working now on the transition of the curve to the bead. And it's really important that you have your tool technique and use the right tool to make this move, because you're working with end grain coming at you, and this is not an easy cut to make. So anyway, I've got my tool rest up and to the side a little bit, and to make the bead, I'm going to pull back, and it's a pull cut. Now the reason I like the pull cut is you can adjust the bead as you go very easily. And I'm just running the tip of the tool right here against the wood. Now you can be brave and come back here and start a cut and make it this way, and that does work. There's nothing wrong with that. But the big problem we have, and it's a little bit hard to see because the wood's spinning, but we need to make the transition between here and here, make this into a bead. And you might be able to see it. We can see some lines there. Well, that's where the tool technique comes in. It's really critical, because if we leave any tool marks in this area of the platter, it will take us forever to sand them out. And you can't even get into this corner with sandpaper probably, so you want to be really accurate with this cut. And now, I've met this piece of wood. I'm going to take the tool, put it almost perfectly flat, and I'm going to push in a bit. And that starts my bead. Now I'll pull out, and I'm forming the curve this way. So I'll come back in, match that up smoothly, push in, and now I'll pull out, and there. Now we've created a nice bead underneath. Okay, now I reverse this on the lathe, and I'm just hogging out the wood. But what I went ahead and did, off camera, I went ahead and drilled the 1/2-inch hole I should have put on this end to begin with and not on the bottom. And let me just show you this real quick. Here are the jaws, and I'm expanding them out to fit into that recess. So this just fits on nice and snug. I expand it out, and it holds it beautifully. So anyway, I'm going to start hogging this out, and it's just like hogging out the inside of a bowl, except I want to leave the center so I can have a nice slope down there, because that's where the spindle hooks up. So I just come in here and start making gentle cuts, and we're going to work our way down to the rough shape that we want to finish the platter with. Okay, this is looking pretty good, but I don't know if you can tell, yeah, got a little bit of tear out. Now there's another tool that's really good for removing that, and that's a really heavy-duty bowl scraper, because if you think about it, we're actually making a small bowl here instead of a platter, because this is the way bowls are normally made. So we'll just turn this on. I have a negative rake on this, which is an angle down, so this is going to be very easy to control while I'm touching it to the wood. It just cuts the wood like butter. It's really a neat way to use a scraper, because if you don't have the negative rake on there, it'll get a little bit grabby when you come up to something like this, where you have a transition between the side and the front, because it runs that whole edge as you're contacting the wood. And the nice thing about this scraper is it also matches the shape of the curve I made on the lip of the platter here. So I'll be able to make this just, really nice. The shape is going to be beautiful, and the surface will be all ready for sanding in. Okay, I promised you I'd never show you sanding, but I need to show you a little bit here. When I sanded the back of the platter, I actually had to have it running and sand it by hand because of all the detail work. I didn't want to cut off any of the edges with a sanding disc. But now I'm sanding the inside, and since it's got nice gentle curves, I can use a sanding pad mounted onto a mandrel with a foam backing to sand the inside of it. And this stuff is really cool because as you sand, you can see that this disc follows the curve of the bowl, and the reason it does that, it's got these little flaps on the end, which is real nice. The normal sanding paper you get is just round, and that will actually cut in and destroy that nice shape. So if you use a flappy type of disc like this, it'll come in here, follow the curve, come up here, follow this curve, go around. So this is a great way to sand and finish your project. Well, I went ahead and turned the top platter because it's the exact same process as turning the bottom platter, except you need to mount a smaller set of jaws in your chuck to hold this when you expand into that 1-inch hole, which the spindle goes into. And then after applying a couple coats of polyurethane and buffing it, you have a beautiful, elegant, elevated platter that you can serve delicious treats to all your friends and buddies. So until the next time on the Wood Turning Workshop, keep turning. Hey, you know, Brian, these aren't bad. You ought to really try one.
No thanks.
Aw, chicken. No, actually liver. I've mounted a chuck on my lathe.
Want to start over?
Yeah. Okay. Here you go, buddy. Pretty good stuff, isn't it? Don't mind if I do. It's shaking. What the? Try that again.
To purchase a DVD copy of this program, please call 800-823-7210. For more information about Wood Turning Workshop, visit our website, rsupublictv.org.
This week on the Wood Turning Workshop, we're going to make something that'll help you entertain all of your friends, an elevated platter. So I want to come in, start a curve, come back here, start a curve. So until the next time on the Wood Turning Workshop, keep turning. Hey, you know, Brian, these aren't bad.